So it has been an absolutely crazy day between Ukraine and Russia. I was going to talk about the three rail incidents as the lead story this morning, and then I had to shift and divert to talk about the strike on the Russian bombers. So if you haven't seen that, go back to that video or see that next. But here's what I was going to talk about as a lead story. There were three separate rail incidents in the last couple of days. Okay, so here we'll start with what Sputnik News says about it, and then I'll show you some other more legitimate sources. Bridge explosions in Bryansk and Kursk regions. Okay, this was like a day apart from each other. Both bridges in Bryansk and Kursk regions were blown up, causing trains to derail. Here's what you need to know. And so they'll talk about in Bryansk region, there was a train wreck. A road bridge was blown up directly above active railway tracks, crashing a moving train into the debris. Then you saw this, 7 dead, 69 injured, including an 8-month-old baby. The locomotive cabin suffered fatal impact. The driver and his assistant were killed. So they're making it like it was some kind of T attack by the Ukrainians here. Investigators confirmed it was a deliberate explosion, likely using an improvised explosive device. One of the supports was damaged, causing the span to collapse. Okay, so that's what we know about what happened here with this train attack. But there's an open question whether this was an attack or whether it was other damage or whatever. Okay, so then this was that was the Bryansk, and here's Kursk. At the time, the freight locomotive was moving across the bridge, and the second similar case in Russia in one day. Like, that's pretty crazy that there's two of these going on, and this was going over the bridge, as you can see, and the trestle kind of broke, and yeah. Okay, another rail incident in Russia occurred. According to Russian media, unknown individuals blew up a railway section in Bryansk region. This is the first. The Kursk was second, and the track inspection train was passing through at the time, but it was not damaged. So footage from the Bryansk site where the bridge collapsed on top of a Russian train. So the train was going under and it collapsed on. The other was going over and it collapsed. And then there was a third. But let's talk about why this was important first. So the Russian rail network is essential for Russia's military logistics and economy. It really is. They use trains like in the United States, we use trucks. I mean, they use trains significantly there still. We think about trains almost like as an outmoded system, but they use trains for everything. The Russian military is heavily dependent on the rail system. It's the only means for Russians to haul supplies in large quantities through the country. Especially the rail tracks leading to Ukraine are absolutely crucial for Russia to be operational. So it looks like the Ukrainians may have had a hand in it, or did they? Hold on. Without them, the war effort would fall apart quite soon. While many point out that the Kerch Bridge linking Russia with Crimea is important, it is by far not the only weak link. There are plenty of bridges in the region, Bryansk, Kursk, Belgorod, especially in Rostov, which are quite vulnerable. The attached map shows the rail network of Russia and the Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine. Due to their length, it's not feasible for Russia to protect them all. So there's something to be said for size. So here we have Kursk and Bryansk, and then all the other rails that's connecting. And down here, this would be pretty bad for the Russians if the Ukrainians hit the Kursk bridge. But there are other ways to get things into the region. It's just as long as they control this, they can still get things wherever they need to go. But the railway system is very important to the Russians. That's the overall point. Okay, now Sergei Sumaliny posted this. Attention, Russian disinformation on railway bridges collapses. 1. Ukraine HUR has destroyed a military train crossing a bridge in Russia-occupied Ukraine in the Zaporizhia Oblast. And I didn't even talk about that one yet, but the Ukrainians are actually saying that they have done that one. The other two, it's questionable yet. I can't honestly tell what's going on. In Russia's Bryansk Oblast, an overloaded truck has caused collapse of an old automobile bridge, hit a passenger train, leading to the death of 7 people. Well, maybe that's what happened. We don't know. They say that there was an explosion in Sputnik, but Sputnik, that and $5 will buy you a cup of coffee. Russian bridges collapse regularly each year practically because of corruption and negligence. Now, that also rings true that there is some problem here that they're not maintaining things as well as they should. Now, whether it's because of corruption or whether it is because the Ukrainians did it or something else, and we'll talk about something else in just a moment, the net effect is still the same. Now Russia pushes a narrative, Ukrainian killed passengers of a train, obviously to blame the Ukrainians and to strengthen Russia's diplomatic position. Well, that might be what's going on. But his basic point was that Russian bridges collapse regularly each year practically because of corruption and negligence. Here's April 2024. Here's October 2023. Here's July 2022. Here's November 2020, July 2018, May 2015, right? So it could be that that's what's going on. Now, because they're both like in Kursk and Bryansk, it's a little bit more questionable, but there's still more to the story, and we have to address what's left in the story. So here's Anton Gerashenko talking about how 2 bridges collapsed in Bryansk and Kursk regions of Russia last night. And then that's not including the third that we're otherwise talking about that the Ukrainians took credit for attacking the rail line. Okay, damage to passenger and freight trains. Russian authorities say they were blown up. This looks like the work of Russian FSB before the next round of talks in Istanbul. Okay, so we now have 3 categories. 1, the Ukrainians did it. 2, it's just corruption and lack of maintenance. And 3, it's a false flag, potentially. I don't know which it is. I'm just putting the information that we have out there. In Bryansk region, a bridge collapsed as a passenger train was going under it. Okay, so we know that. In the Russian media reports, 7 people were killed, 73 more were injured. Okay, so that's problematic. In Kursk region, another bridge collapsed as a cargo train was moving on it, and one of the locomotive engineers damaged his leg in the incident. So 1 under, 1 over, and Russia's investigative committee claims that the bridges in Bryansk and Kursk region have collapsed from explosions. Russian MP Katarpolov is already blaming Ukraine. Russia has constantly been promoting the narrative that Ukraine is a T, and I don't pronounce that here for YouTube censors, country for at least a year, but Ukrainian attacks have been launched only against Russia's military infrastructure and military logistics, whereas Russia is known for false flag T operations. That was used in 1991 to bring Putin, or 1999 to bring Putin to power. So they have done that before. I don't know whether that is or not, and I don't have enough evidence to prove one way or another. Tomorrow is another round of Ukraine-Russian talks, which is scheduled in Istanbul. These explosions are a good way for Russia to sabotage the process. Russia is getting ready to voice unacceptable conditions at the talks in Istanbul, so it wants to play the card of we can't talk to a T country that blows up passenger trains to distract attention from the fact that these peace conditions cannot be accepted. Thus, Russia will turn down all talks about a ceasefire that was never intended to agree on in the first place, and to continue its offensive in Sumy region of Ukraine, as well as other parts of the front line. Russia is behind these explosions to draw attention away from attacks in Ukrainian cities. So that's what he's arguing, that Russia is behind it. I don't know that they are or that they aren't, but at least the other one, the Ukrainians are talking about like, hey, we're behind that. Okay, bridges are constantly collapsing in Russia, says Jay in Kyiv, in a country where you can bribe anyone for anything. This is just how things work. Today's railway bridge collapse in Bryansk claims 70 people is just another. Well, that could be. It could just be simple corruption, but the effect is still the same, that it shut down that rail line. Okay, also according to the HUR, the Russian train that was blown up and derailed in the territory of Zaporizhia tonight, now this is the one that they're taking credit for. On the night of May 31st, 2025, an explosion occurred on a railway section near the temporarily occupied settlement of Yaklimivka, Metalpol district in Zaporizhia region. A military train of the Russian invaders was blown up. The train was moving towards Crimea. As a result of the explosion of the railway track, the train with fuel tanks and freight cars went down the slope. The key logistical artery of the Russians in occupied territories of the Zaporizhia region and Crimea was disrupted, and so that's where this was. Now, what's important about that, there was also another sabotage attempt of a train car the other day. The fuel tank was on fire and that sort of thing. So again, Russia is too big to be able to defend everywhere at every time. Okay. The train consisted of fuel and freight cars. As a result, the explosion of the train derailed. The rail track is crucial for logistic support of the Russian army in the south of Ukraine. Okay. Now, same thing. Another talking point about the same thing. Okay. Now, that's on top of what was happening here today with the big story that I talked about that I'm going to talk about again because I have significant updates. I'll put in the next video. This is amazing. Ukrainian drone operators destroyed Russian Tu-95 strategic bombers in real time, 4,400 kilometers from the front line where they thought that they were safe. And I'll talk about that and exactly how it happened, because now I know. I didn't know when I was reporting initially, but now I know, and that'll be in the next video. In the meantime, there's just one other thing from Andrew Perpetua I want to point out. One town in Russia, the people who died in 3 different wars. Afghanistan, they lost 2. In Chechnya, they lost 1. And in Ukraine, they lost 34. 34, like, just extrapolate that and just think about this. The population is 10,000. In 1989, the population was 9,200. So the town has not grown that much in the past 30 years or so. Probably hasn't grown much in the 10 years prior either, but I don't have data. If you extrapolate this town from the rest of Russia, to the rest of Russia rather, assuming every town in Russia suffered a KIA at the same proportion as this one, then Russia would have around 470,000 dead. And that really gels with what decent estimates are from the West, from the Brits or from Ukraine or wherever. I think that there's something probably right about that. Now, I know that it's not perfect. It's just a really rough cut. And even Andrew says, obviously, extrapolating from a single data point isn't reliable. Everyone knows that. Saying it doesn't make you sound smart. He was replying to somebody else that was talking about this. But I think there's something to this. And that gives you a sense of just where Russia is. So they're in a hurt. And today was, I think, probably the worst day of Russian losses since the war began. All right, I'm going to put out another video just after I put this one up, talking about just how bad this has been and how the Ukrainians did what they did today with the other strikes. All right, thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.